Renana, it was so good. So good. It's so good to see you. As we begin, for those listeners and viewers who don't know you, can you say a few words about your current role in the organization?
Yeah, absolutely. I'm very happy to be here with you. So my name is Renana Friedlich. I've been in the cybersecurity space for the last 20 years, and I
Hmm.
currently serve as a CISO at LPL Financial.
And can you say a few words about the size of the organization and your mandate?
Yeah, absolutely. So I oversee the cybersecurity program end to end. We serve advisors across the United States and
Hmm.
provide a platform that enables them to support their end customers. So very exciting opportunity.
So financial services, it's a very special industry. The uh, it's heavily regulated, and the level of scrutiny and the requirements, the compliance requirements, that's much more stringent. But it's certainly not your first foray in the area. I know you were with PayPal before that, but what was your first to get an idea of the arc, the trajectory of your career? How did you get started in cybersecurity? What was the first role or project?
So, I grew up in Israel, born and raised. And so in Israel, you have the opportunity to serve in the military. And so I got exposed to technology and specifically cybersecurity at a very young age. I actually owned a website when I was a teenager. And back in the day, it was very innovative for teenagers to own a website in Israel. And so that's how I was identified for an elite intelligence unit in the Israeli Defense Forces. And I had a really unique time in the military, which not only exposed me to the most amazing technology one could ask for, but it also gave me the tools and allowed me to get exposed to people and mindset that was so unique, so special, that really jumped started my career. And I will share with you and the listeners, I've tried to leave cybersecurity a few times and maybe explore other avenues, but something always called me back.
It's interesting because it's uh, Israel is certainly punching above its weight in terms of cybersecurity startups. As a matter of fact, I was in New York on Wednesday with Glilot Capital Partners. They're hosting a dinner, CISOs and founders. They brought a few early stage A round companies and founders in New York. It was a very interesting discussion. But it's interesting that well, there was Wiz and there was Checkpoint and Sierra and a lot of other notable companies that you actually went on the corporate side, uh, which is amazing. Which kind of brings me to the next question. From the vantage point of your career right now, what will be your advice for some of the junior practitioners, maybe someone who's just starting in their SOC analyst or GRC, or even maybe earlier, maybe in college, looking at different career options and considering cybersecurity? What would be your advice for them?
So I think it really connects to a point I was in earlier in my career. I was with the military for several years. I really enjoyed what I was doing, but something in me wanted to see what else is out there. What else can I do? And that shifted my career trajectory. So I went from after many years in the military, I joined consulting and I was with Ernst and Young for 8 wonderful years and had the opportunity to try different types of engagements. I had the opportunity to serve different industries and see which one was a good fit for my background and skill set. And so
Mm.
when I think about advice for young professionals, oftentimes people feel like they have to figure it all out. They have to know what they want to do. But especially in those early days, I think it is so important to just try different things and get exposure and fail. People don't like talking about it, but it's important to fail. And I have failed miserably a number of times. Maybe we'll keep that for another conversation. But I learned so much from each and every one of those experiences, and putting yourself out there, saying yes to whatever that you can say yes to, and getting that experience so that as you progress in your career and as you get to that point where maybe you want to specialize in something, maybe you know what that right path is for you, you can
Mhm.
bring a diverse set of experiences into that role.
So it sounds like when you're early on, the cost of failure is fairly low, and it sounds like you're encouraging people to try different areas so you can find this field that you can be excited about for a long period of time and double down. But you will not know that unless you try different areas. I mean, it's so cybersecurity is so vast. From it can be even non-technical. I mean, GRC, you don't need to be. It's more about kind of following the compliance procedures, and rather than.
But let me say something to that, Misha. You know, even GLC. So I grew up in that space and touched different aspects of it, and I've seen over the years how much time we spend on collecting evidence back and forth via email, like the endless process. And even nowadays, there are companies who are bringing innovation and technology into the very traditional GLC space that's been managed a certain way for so many years. And so I think there are opportunities whether someone wants to be very technical, hands-on, or if they want to be more in the GLC space, there are opportunities to bring domains together and find ways to do something that is traditional in a new way.
Mm. I see. I see. Well, then kind of it makes perfect sense. I want to also double click on something that I know it's a topic that you're passionate about, and uh, I'm very serious about as well. I'm looking at a FINIA of 2,000 members, but only 20% are women, and I think it's unfortunate and unfair. And I think we all should do more about it. And it's uh, not always easy to kind of to find the path, and it's not without challenges. From your experience, what would be your advice for women who want to make a career, who want to get to become a CISO eventually? What would be your advice for them?
So I think my advice here, let's start with the women, but I want to talk about the men and what men should be doing to bringing more women into the space. I think for women, like claiming the seat at the table is so important. And oftentimes women will say yes to maybe tasks that, are important, but not the ones that will put them necessarily at the center of attention. And I remember, I'll share this with you and the listeners. I remember like going to a security conference and almost being intimidated, like, hey, well, where are the other women? Why am I the only one here? And someone said something to me that shifted my perspective. They said, Renana, make this your biggest advantage. Make sure that people will remember you, what makes you stand out. And I was like, I can relate to that. And so up until that point, I would just try to be one of the guys. And then I realized I don't need to be one of the guys. I need to be me. I need to be Renana, and it will resonate with some people better. But basically, stand for who you are and not try to hide it. I think at the same time, and I was reflecting on it, preparing for our conversation today, believe it or not, I did not have many female mentors throughout my career. And so I've had great men allies who grew me and coached me and gave me opportunities. And I'm so grateful for their role in my life. And so I think the call out there is really if you see someone that has the potential, man or woman, or whatever identity that they claim for themselves, invest in them. And this will pay back so much more as you start to get to that point where you're growing and mentoring others. And I've personally had the pleasure of mentoring high school students, female high school students, and exposing them to the opportunities that exist within the cybersecurity space. It's something that I'm very, very passionate about. But it takes that one person saying, you know what, I'm going to commit, whether that's an hour once a month, once a quarter, whatever that is, to bring new talent into this amazing industry.
Interesting. And you're right. It's not just up to women; it's also up to men to create this paths. And but other than mentorship, what else can men do?
So recognizing some of the differences, if like, let's talk about the share of voice, and making sure that everyone at the table has a chance to speak. If you
Hmm.
see someone that didn't raise their hand or didn't say something during that meeting, are you going to call that out?
Hmm.
I oftentimes, in the virtual setup, like you see people going off mute, but then they go back on mute. And as a leader, you got to be mindful of those events. And if you
Hmm.
see something like that, give them the opportunity to share because they probably had something important to say. Um, I think it's also about just being transparent in terms of expectations and recognizing that there are differences in how certain behaviors are seen for men and women.
Hmm.
And if you're mindful of that, maybe you can even call out some biases or misconceptions about how women are treated in the workplace. And again, something that I'm very passionate about. I I still remember the first time I got invited to a women event here in the States. And I asked my leader at that time, I said, I don't understand, like, why do we need a women event? Like, why can't we just have conversations like everyone else? And I think it took me a long period of time to understand the importance of creating the space, the importance of the conversations about life transitions and how you're supporting employees as they navigate them. And even myself as a young mother, like just being able to navigate that very special time in my career. So the more we do, the more successful we're going to be in bringing diverse people into the cybersecurity space, but not only bringing them in, but also retaining them with us.
Absolutely. Absolutely. Well, I'm so happy that we touched on that because we don't talk enough about it, and most definitely we don't do enough about it. So it's I hope just for people to listen to this message, I think I'm sure it will resonate with many.
I sure
Uh,
hope so.
uh,
And I should probably say for the listeners, like I grabbed Misha at Black Hat last year, and I basically said, Misha, we got to talk not about how we bring people in, but we got to talk retention.
Absolutely, and we'll especially mention transitions, right? So it's important that organizations and people in the organizations, all the way from the C level, from the executive team and the board, they support executives not just for from quarter to quarter, but long term. It's certainly and it's unfortunate that it's changing a little bit because it used to be like in Japan, you join a company and you're there for life. If it's I don't know, Mitsubishi or Toyota, it's but in the US, it seems like I mean, you look at LinkedIn and you look at CISOs. It's I don't know, if someone is in a certain position for 2 years, it seems like a long period of time. Even though it's interesting, not to sidetrack us on a different conversation, we saw uh, a report, a survey of 500 CISOs by our friends at Hitch Partners. They actually, I'll forward you the link. It's actually a very interesting read. And one of the things that they found is that the tenure has increased. So people are staying longer in their position.
Yes.
I think it's probably a factor of the factor that the number of open positions versus the number of CISOs looking for a job is still there's still a bit of a disbalance there. So people are kind of staying on for longer, which is I think interesting. Um, Renana, this is awesome. So uh, I guess one thing that attracts me to cybersecurity is that it's always changing, always evolving. It feels like you wake up and everything is coming to you at 100 miles an hour. It seems like. What is top of mind now for CISOs? What are the top two, three high priority problems and challenges, whether it's technology or uh, threat actors? What's top of mind for you right now?
So here's what I'm gonna say. First of all, let's talk about everyone's favorite topic, deepfake. And I saw a video on LinkedIn, I want to say a week and a half, 2 weeks ago, where an interviewing thought he was talking to a candidate, but then he realized something was fishy in that conversation, and he was suspecting that he's talking to a bot. So the interviewer asks the bot, like, "Hey, can you put your hand in front of your face?" And I apologize, I do not recall the name of the individual who posted it, so I cannot give them the credit which is due. And he's like, "If you cannot do it within the next 5 seconds, I'm going to terminate the conversation right here." So I get constant questions about, hey, I see the use of deepfake in recruiting. I see it in finance. And we don't know yet, beyond some specific solutions that we can offer as CISOs to organizations in terms of the process and what to do, and if you suspect it. But I don't think there are like tools, at least not ones that I was exposed to, that will allow you to actually stop that from happening or respond to it in a moment's notice. And so we are very much reliant on user awareness, kind of like we do with phishing in certain areas. And I think the question for CISOs these days, how do you take it to that next level? How do
Mm.
you empower your users? And most importantly, what else is it that we need to do? So again, I'm sure I'm going to get some responses once we publish today's conversation from those tech companies who are already solving for it. And I would say on top of it, to me, it's really the simplification of the security portfolio. There are so many different vendors. As a CISO, you're managing dozens of contracts, dozens of relationships. Everyone is competing for your attention. How do you ensure that you have the right model in place that allows you to protect the business, but also build those very deep relationships? What
Mm-hmm.
are the areas where you want to use commodity tools versus the areas where you need the cutting edge solutions? And ultimately, how do you get there? There is no magic switch right now that will allow companies to just say, okay, one and done exercise. And so I really think this is a space where we're going to see a lot more companies asking not only how do I create a roadmap, but how do I execute against that roadmap more effectively?
Mm-hmm. Well, on the first one, actually, there was a famous case, I think, was it almost like half a year ago, when someone in Singapore in financial institution
Yep,
transferred 20 million, it was in tens of millions of dollars, because he thought he was in a Zoom call with several people. One of whom was his boss, who instructed him to wire that amount to a
right.
certain account. And all the people in the Zoom call were AI generated, and it was so believable that he actually the transfer went through. So
Yep.
it's certainly germane to the conversation that, and if anything, it seems like AI is just getting exponentially better. So the quality of those deepfakes very soon will surpass human ability to discern real versus fake. So I guess follow up question: do you think technology will solve this proof of human at some point, or do you think it will be ever elusive line that will just keep shifting?
I don't know. And I think that's one of the top questions that people are asking right now. So I've personally, both at PayPal and LPL, have had conversations with the right stakeholders to bring the topic to awareness and offer some mitigations as to what you do if you think you've encountered that situation. But I also recognize that there are gaps in how we're thinking about it. And this is where we collectively need to come together as a community to offer a better solution than the one off each CISO has for their specific organization.
Yeah. And on the second question, um, it's certainly a big question, because managing, and this question gets asked, like, how many individual relationships with vendor relationships are you managing? And it's, for most people, it's dozens and dozens. So I guess with this, do you think eventually we'll get to this ever elusive single pane of glass solution where it's really one agent that does everything? Or do you think people will go VAR, MSSP route where they manage one relationship with the VAR who actually assembles all solutions and presents it as one, even though a solution that's made of point solutions, but kind of one contract, one point of contact?
I am yet to see an organization that completely outsourced their security program and was 100% content.
Mm-hmm.
And I think, it really depends on the risk appetite and the industry that you're in and the regulatory requirements. So I like there's a lot of gray in between the different options of having like fully in-house practice, everything outsourced. Um, and I think it also comes down to budget expectations in terms of how much you're willing to pay. So I don't foresee a world in which you have a one solution that can do it all for you. But I think CISOs, myself included, are always evaluating what is it that we can do and deliver within the budget framework, and how
Mm-hmm.
can we optimize that consistently.
I see. So it sounds like for the foreseeable future, it'd still be a handful of integrated solutions, but still with a handful of point solutions mixed in between. So neither one
Exactly.
point of glass nor 100% VAR will be feasible. It sounds like.
And look, I think ultimately being at a place where you have your different security tools connected to one another and you're able to get that end-to-end view is where we should aspire to be as a community. Recognizing that not only CISOs are overwhelmed at times, but our internal consumers are also overwhelmed. They get so many findings and so many asks from security teams that they ask, like, hey, but at the end of the day, between those 10, 20 findings, what is it that you really want me to focus on right now? And they struggle. If we struggle to provide that holistic point of view, how can we expect them to be able to understand what's the most important thing right now?
Certainly. Well, I guess AI will come to your rescue at some point, and we'll be able to sift through all those notifications and alerts, and so they'll bubble up and triage some of the most important ones in real time.
I've seen a lot of exciting innovation, and I'm intentionally not mentioning anyone's name here. But I've seen companies that talk about, if you think about application security, which vulnerability actually makes it to runtime so that you can prioritize remediation there. I've seen companies that talk about even automatic remediation of code vulnerabilities. And again, you got to be at a certain trust level to go there. But if your developers are writing vulnerable code and you have a solution that can fix it for them without any involvement from those.
Mhm. Mhm. Well, I think it's a good transition to. I know we're coming up on time, to the question about the future. If you had a crystal ball, and we'll probably wrap AI around us, but if you had a crystal ball and you can see into the future, and 12 months from now, 2 years from now, CISOs will be um, anxious about, excited about what two, three ideas or technologies. And I'll preface this: probably AI will be one of them. And specific, you mentioned one of the applications of AI, specifically around automatic remediation, and maybe there are applications for in-house SOC teams and things like this. But I think the other two aspects of it is securing internal compute, because it seems like businesses are adopting AI at a fairly rapid pace. So, in addition to using AI for cybersecurity teams, businesses are already deploying AI. And how do you make sure that your private data is not going to end up on servers in the third world, unfriendly country? And the another aspect, the third aspect of AI, deep fakes, how to counter AI being used for nefarious purposes by threat actors, and if there's any other major themes that you think will play out next 12 months, I'd love to hear. I'd love to get your perspective. Mm-hmm. I see. Makes sense. Well, Renana, thank you so much for your time. This was I really enjoyed our conversation. Where can people find you? What's the best way to connect? Sounds good. Sounds like a plan. Thank you.